From the marble floors of opulent mansions to the hushed whispers in private jets, Gregory Farnsworth had it all: wealth, power, and a carefully curated air of mystery. He was the charming tycoon everyone envied, a self-made man whose sly grin could open any door in the highest echelons of society. When rumors of his affair with a dazzling young woman threatened his pristine reputation, people assumed it was just tabloid fodder. But little did they know that behind the glossy headlines lay a secret so explosive it would shake their entire world. Enter the mistress, demanding everything he promised her until a very pregnant wife arrived in court. Gregory Farnsworth was born without much fanfare in the working-class neighborhood of East Chicago. He grew up sleeping in a cramped bedroom with his younger sister Harper, who would become his only confidant during those difficult years. From a young age, Gregory had an insatiable hunger for success. He devoured business books from the local library, while other boys played ball on the street. He pored over articles about titans of industry like Warren Buffett and real estate moguls such as Donald Bren. His mother, Linda, worked double shifts as a nurse's aide, but her meager salary could barely keep food on their table. Gregory, with his sharp intellect, vowed to escape this life of struggle. By the time he hit his 20s, Gregory had already discovered his knack for real estate speculation. He borrowed money from a distant uncle and invested in undervalued properties. Within a few years, he'd turned his initial stake into a small fortune, flipping run-down townhouses into modern condos. Fueled by ambition, Gregory ventured into the world of commercial real estate and partnered with a boutique firm in downtown Chicago, where his cunning negotiations and unwavering drive quickly earned him a formidable reputation. When the Farnsworth name began appearing in business journals across the Midwest, Gregory's social circle expanded dramatically. He was invited to exclusive galas, lavish dinners, and philanthropic events, rubbing shoulders with hedge fund managers, tech entrepreneurs, and Hollywood actors who visited Chicago for red carpet soirees. His outward charm and self-deprecating humor won over prospective clients and high-profile investors. Even back then, there were rumors of Gregory's wandering eye, but most people wrote it off as harmless flirtation until he met Eleanor Chamberlain. Eleanor, poised and graceful, belonged to one of New York's old money families. She had grown up in a Park Avenue penthouse, attended the Spence School, and finished her degree at Princeton. With luminous blue eyes and an elegant air about her, Ella was everything Gregory wasn't: quietly confident, deeply connected to high society, and wholly uninterested in fame. Their meeting at a charity function was nothing short of a whirlwind. Within months, Gregory proposed in front of the Trevi Fountain in Rome, sealing their love story in a moment of cinematic splendor. Their marriage became the talk of upper-crust circles, the self-made Midwestern millionaire and the pedigreed Manhattan debutante. Gregory's union with Ella granted him an all-access pass to the most exclusive realms of society. While he continued to expand his real estate empire, Ella supported him, forging philanthropic alliances that bolstered his reputation. When they moved to a sprawling estate in Lake Forest, their union seemed an unbreakable fortress, or so everyone believed. In the bright lights of Chicago's luxury enclaves, Gregory caught the eye of a young socialite named Camilla Thompson. Camilla was a fixture on the nightlife scene, known for wearing head-turning Chanel gowns at black-tie events and sipping champagne at the city's most exclusive clubs. Friends of Gregory warned him to steer clear of her. She had a tabloid presence and a taste for drama. But as is often the case with men intoxicated by power, Gregory couldn't resist the thrill. Camilla was drawn to Gregory's polished charm. He was older and possessed a sense of gravitas that the boys her age lacked. He, in turn, was lured by Camilla's zest for life and her unfiltered adoration for him, something Ella, with her composed demeanor, did not openly display. Their affair began with stolen kisses in the back of Gregory's Mercedes and late-night phone calls after Ella had gone to bed. But it didn't stay discreet for long. In a city rife with paparazzi, eager for salacious headlines, secrets are short-lived. The first photos emerged in a small-time gossip blog, a snapshot of Gregory and Camilla exiting a five-star restaurant, her hand lingering just a bit too long on his arm. Gregory used his resources to contain the scandal, paying off editors and forging exclusive deals to bury the story. For a time, it worked. However, Camilla had tastes far beyond flowers and clandestine dinners. She wanted financial security, a spectacular penthouse with a view of Lake Michigan, and a future that elevated her from the pages of society gossip columns to the ranks of the truly elite. She wasn't shy about telling Gregory how she felt. Some say she even threatened to sell her story to major tabloid TV shows if he didn't meet her demands. But Gregory, determined to keep the affair hidden from Ella, promised Camilla the world. She became the hidden queen in his life, her every desire quietly funded by Farnsworth money. Despite Gregory's best efforts, the rumors about Camilla grew louder in hushed circles. Ella began to sense the distance between them. Once so attentive, Gregory now left their bed in the middle of the night to take calls from Asia. She noticed changes in his demeanor, late arrivals to family functions, a sudden obsession with lavish gifts, and suspicious credit card statements for high-end clothing stores she'd never frequented. Meanwhile, Camilla grew bolder, parading around Chicago in designer outfits that Gregory purchased brazenly, showing off her luxurious trappings to her close friends. Some nights, Camilla could be seen gallivanting around the lobby of the Peninsula Hotel or hosting private parties at a penthouse suite. Everyone in her circle guessed the benefactor of these lavish escapades. Gregory found himself in a precarious position. His mistress was dangerously close to exposing everything he'd worked so hard to protect. It wasn't just the threat to his marriage that concerned him. His entire public image, a self-made tycoon with a philanthropic edge, would be annihilated if people discovered he was funneling funds to keep his mistress happy. Business partners, including powerful acquaintances like Stephen Schwartzman, had extended invitations to collaborate on major deals. Any scandal could unravel those opportunities in an instant. Desperate to maintain control, Gregory threw money at the problem. He bought Camilla a luxurious penthouse near Magnificent Mile, no questions asked. He showered her with jewelry from Tiffany & Co. and whisked her away on private jets to Aspen for weekend ski trips. He had attorneys draw up ironclad non-disclosure agreements, but Camilla refused to sign them without further assurances. To complicate matters, Camilla's flamboyant personality yearned for recognition. She wanted more than hush money. She craved the status that came with being Mrs. Farnsworth. It was a brisk December evening when Ella first confronted Gregory about the rumors. They stood in the grand foyer of their Lake Forest estate, the glow of the crystal chandelier illuminating the tension in their eyes. Ella held a manila folder, bank statements. She had circled suspicious transactions, pointing to excessive spending at boutiques she'd never set foot in. Gregory tried to stammer out an excuse about investments and client hospitality, but Ella's piercing gaze told him she didn't believe a word. "I'm your wife, Gregory," she said quietly, "and I know when something is wrong." What neither Gregory nor Ella realized was that events were about to take an even more drastic turn. Camilla was pregnant. This revelation landed in Gregory's life like a meteor strike. She confided in him after a lavish dinner, tears in her eyes, voice trembling. Her test results was certain. The child was his. Panic coursed through Gregory. For months, he had precariously balanced his double life. But fathering a child with his mistress threatened to demolish every wall he had built around his secrets. Camilla, far from frightened, saw an opportunity. She told him that if he didn't step up, both financially and emotionally, she would take her story to the tabloids, painting him as a heartless philanderer who abandoned her in her time of need. The irony was that Ella had her own secret. She too was pregnant. After years of difficulty conceiving, Ella had finally received the good news from her doctor. She hoped the baby would reconnect her and Gregory. She planned a special moment to tell him, anticipating tears of joy. Little did she know, he was already drowning in a tidal wave of guilt and fear. Gregory's life became a nightmare. By day, he negotiated 8-figure real estate deals and shook hands with powerful investors. By night, he juggled tense phone calls from Camilla, demanding paternal attention and hush money, while Ella hoped to share her miracle news. Each day that passed without a resolution was a day closer to everything collapsing. Rumblings started surfacing in the local tabloids again. This time, the chatter was more sinister. Farnsworth Mistress, expecting sources, say a big payout is coming. Gregory's PR team scrambled to do damage control. He insisted the story was manufactured by envious rivals. But behind closed doors, he was forced to promise Camilla more and more, an even bigger condominium, a car, and monthly support that soared into 6 figures. One day, while attending a high-profile charity gala, Gregory could barely maintain a facade of composure. Ella noticed his hands shaking when he reached for a glass of champagne. She pulled him aside, her voice quivering with concern. "Please, Gregory, talk to me," she begged. "Whatever it is, I want to help." But Gregory couldn't bring himself to reveal the truth. He couldn't destroy the woman he loved, especially not after everything they'd built, and especially now unaware that she was carrying his child too. So he evaded her questions and continued dancing a dangerous waltz between 2 pregnancies and 2 women who both demanded his commitment. Inevitably, Ella discovered she was pregnant. Elated, she arranged for a quiet dinner in their glass-walled sunroom to share the news. Candlelight flickered against the windows, and classical music softly played in the background. She handed Gregory a small, neatly wrapped box. Inside was a baby's onesie embroidered with the words, "Hello, Daddy." Tears sprung to her eyes when she saw Gregory's reaction. Instead of pure joy, there was a flicker of dread. He forced a smile, mumbled something akin to congratulations, and hurriedly left the room. Confusion gripped Ella. Why wasn't he more thrilled? A week later, a confrontation erupted when Ella stumbled across a set of legal documents in Gregory's study. Her name was nowhere on them, but Camilla Thompson's was. Ella cornered Gregory, brandishing the papers like evidence in a criminal trial. "You're setting up a trust fund for another woman," she demanded, her voice shaking. Cornered and weary, Gregory confessed. He revealed the affair, the pregnancy, and Camilla's threats. Ella's face drained of color. Heartbreak etched lines of betrayal across her features. She let out a strangled sob. "I gave up everything to be with you. How could you do this?" Gregory tried to console her, promising that his relationship with Camilla was over. The trust fund was just to ensure the child would be taken care of, nothing more. He swore he'd handle it. But Ella was inconsolable. She left for New York the next morning, seeking refuge in her parents' estate on the Upper East Side. With Ella gone, Gregory was left in a precarious situation. Camilla, emboldened by Ella's departure, demanded he finalize the trust fund and make a public announcement claiming responsibility for her unborn child. "I want acknowledgement," she insisted, pointing out that her name was being dragged through mud. "Everyone calls me a gold digger, a harlot. I'm sick of it." Gregory's business partners began to catch wind of the scandal. Rumors flew at board meetings that Farnsworth was compromised, that he was hemorrhaging money to keep a mistress quiet, that he was on the verge of a meltdown. In an effort to salvage his empire, Gregory held a press conference denying any wrongdoing, labeling the rumors about Camilla baseless claims by an attention-seeking individual. He reasoned that if he went on the offensive, he could control the narrative. The press conference only poured gasoline on the fire. Camilla felt betrayed. He'd promised her a public acknowledgement, and instead, he publicly discredited her. She reached out to tabloid television, offering an exclusive interview for a handsome sum. Soon, paparazzi surrounded her penthouse. Headlines screamed, "Farnsworth's mistress speaks out, and he promised me everything." Gregory's phone erupted with calls from his frantic PR team. Camilla's story was about to blow up on national television. Feeling cornered yet again, Gregory offered Camilla a staggering amount of money to withdraw the interview, but she was no longer interested in simple hush money. She wanted total vindication, or she wanted him destroyed. Meanwhile, in New York, Ella wrestled with her heartbreak. She couldn't ignore the innocent life growing inside her. Gregory's child. This was supposed to be a moment of celebration, yet she felt only pain and betrayal. Should she file for divorce? Should she return to Chicago and fight for her marriage? For weeks, she confided in her mother, Victoria Chamberlain, a steely matriarch famed for her philanthropic work and her unwavering sense of family duty. Victoria had no love lost for Gregory after learning of his infidelity, but she urged Ella to think carefully before making any rash decisions. Shortly after the tabloids exploded with Camilla's claims, Ella decided to return to Chicago. She understood that if she remained silent, Camilla's narrative would become the dominant story. Besides, she hadn't spoken to Gregory face-to-face since she left, and she needed answers, real answers. When Ella walked into the Farnsworth estate, it was eerily quiet. Most of the household staff had been let go or had quit amid the scandal. She found Gregory hunched over a table strewn with documents. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. Over the course of a tense night, Ella listened to Gregory's pleas for forgiveness. He claimed he'd end everything with Camilla. He would be a father to the child he couldn't abandon, his own flesh and blood, but his heart belonged to Ella, and he begged her to remain by his side. Ella felt a tumult of emotions. How could she trust him again? Yet part of her still loved the man she'd married, the man she believed was fundamentally good underneath all this duplicity. But with each passing day, the tabloids churned out new rumors. Her phone buzzed incessantly with calls from friends, family, and even strangers. She knew the scandal had become a national spectacle. So did Gregory. Camilla, enraged by Gregory's denial of her claims, filed a lawsuit seeking substantial financial support and a legal declaration of paternity. She demanded a monthly allowance that rivaled the salaries of top CEOs, plus additional stipends for luxury childcare, medical expenses, and housing. Gregory's legal team argued that Camilla was extorting him for money. Camilla's lawyer, a flamboyant figure known as Aiden Royce, countered that Camilla was merely securing the future that Gregory had promised her and their unborn child. The lawsuit sent shockwaves through Chicago's elite circles. The Farnsworth name was dragged through salacious court documents detailing the lavish gifts, exotic vacations, and confidential promises Gregory had allegedly made to Camilla. The media lined up outside the courthouse, jostling for the best position to capture Gregory's daily arrivals, Camilla's tearful pleas for justice, and any sign of Ella, whose pregnancy was also a matter of swirling rumor. In a bid to salvage what was left of his reputation, Gregory's attorneys suggested a quiet settlement. But Camilla refused. She wanted the entire world to know the lengths to which Gregory had gone. She insisted that she was not some schemer, but a woman deeply wronged by a powerful man who thought he could buy his way out of anything. On the first day of the trial, the corridors of the Chicago courthouse buzzed with reporters and spectators. The Farnsworth entourage arrived in sleek black SUVs. Camilla, 7 months pregnant and dressed in a stylish maternity dress, made her grand entrance under a flurry of camera flashes. She was flanked by her attorney, Aiden Royce, who delivered cryptic statements to the press about justice and the truth finally coming to light. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Judge Harriet Reynolds presided, known for her no-nonsense approach in high-profile family law cases. Gregory sat at the defendant's table, flanked by his high-priced legal team. Ella was notably absent, fueling gossip that she was done with Gregory for good. The courtroom drama unfolded with meticulous precision. Royce presented bank statements, text message exchanges, and even voice recordings in which Gregory had promised Camilla anything her heart desired. Gregory's attorneys claimed these were taken out of context, that Camilla was twisting his words for personal gain. The tension rose with each piece of evidence. Halfway through the trial, Royce dropped a bombshell, a voice recording of Gregory claiming he would leave Ella once Camilla had the baby. The recording painted Gregory as a man who dangled marriage as a carrot to keep his mistress appeased. "He offered me the Farnsworth name," Camilla tearfully testified. "He said we would build a life together." Gregory's face paled. In truth, he barely remembered saying those words, possibly uttered in a moment of desperation to keep Camilla from going public. But the recording was damning. It painted him as a callous, manipulative man. His attorneys tried to argue that the recording violated Illinois' two-party consent law, but the damage was already done in the court of public opinion. Speculation ran rampant about whether Ella would testify. Some news outlets reported she had fled to Europe. Others speculated she was locked in negotiations to finalize a divorce before stepping foot in court. In reality, Ella was watching the trial from afar, quietly conferring with her own legal counsel. She was exhausted, nauseous, and disillusioned. Her pregnancy was well past its initial weeks, and stress weighed heavily on her health. On the third day of the trial, a hush fell over the courtroom as Ella suddenly arrived, appearing in the rear of the gallery. Dressed in a modest navy blue maternity dress, her baby bump visible, she walked with quiet resolve to the front of the room. Reporters murmured and scribbled furiously. Gregory turned around, looking more terrified than relieved. Camilla's eyes narrowed, unsure of what Ella's presence signaled. Judge Reynolds called a recess to address the sudden shift. Both legal teams retreated into a flurry of private discussions. But after lunch, court resumed and Ella took the stand. The tension was palpable. Camera shutters clicked, capturing the moment like a pivotal scene in a legal drama. Ella testified with a calm, steady voice. She confirmed that Gregory had admitted the affair, that she had found evidence of financial support to Camilla, and that Gregory had concealed the pregnancy from her. Yet she also spoke of her own heartbreak, her discovery that she too was pregnant with Gregory's child, and the betrayal she felt learning about Gregory's deception. When asked by Camilla's attorney if she believed Camilla's allegations about Gregory's grand promises, Ella paused. Tears welled in her eyes. "I believe," she said slowly, "that he was desperate to keep his secrets hidden at all costs. I believe he lied to me, and I believe he lied to her. But I also know that he is not the monster he's being made out to be. He's made terrible choices, and we are all paying for them." Her testimony was a double-edged sword. Yes, it painted Gregory as a liar, but it also cast doubt on Camilla's portrayal of him as an entirely cold-hearted manipulator. Ella implied that Gregory had been swept up in fear, caged by his empire, and had failed to navigate his moral obligations. The moral complexity in her words left the courtroom spellbound. Ella's presence changed the dynamics of the trial. On one hand, it validated many of Camilla's claims that Gregory had indeed been supporting her financially and making lavish promises. On the other, it humanized Gregory, showing that he was a flawed man, caught in a tangled web he helped create, but couldn't escape from easily. Camilla's legal strategy began to shift. Royce recognized that Ella's empathy might sway the judge, or at least complicate the narrative of Gregory as a ruthless manipulator. He pivoted to focusing on the financial obligations, presenting a blueprint of Camilla's demands for the child's upbringing: a secure home, private schooling, and medical care. The proposed costs were astronomical. Gregory's attorneys countered that Camilla was seeking an extravagant lifestyle far beyond the needs of a child. They argued that she was leveraging the pregnancy to secure a future she was not entitled to. They admitted Gregory owed child support under the law, but insisted her demands were predatory. In the swirl of legal arguments, the emotional toll was heavy. Gregory and Ella ironically found themselves speaking more frequently, locked in private conference rooms as Gregory pleaded for her forgiveness and for a chance to start anew once the lawsuit was resolved. Ella remained guarded. Love was one thing, trust was another. Word spread that Camilla was nearing her due date. The baby could arrive any moment, and the lawsuit's resolution loomed over everyone. Then came a day that changed the course of events entirely. Camilla experienced complications at home. She was rushed to Northwestern Memorial Hospital for an emergency checkup. Gossip sites reported it within minutes, fueling speculation about whether Gregory or Ella would rush to her side. To the shock of onlookers, it was Ella who arrived at the hospital first. She later admitted that while Camilla had caused her immeasurable pain, she couldn't ignore another woman in distress, especially one carrying Gregory's child. Camilla, exhausted and in pain, was taken aback by Ella's presence. Their brief conversation in the sterile corridor carried more weight than any court hearing. "I don't expect your forgiveness," Camilla said, tears shining in her eyes, "but I want you to know this was never just about money for me." Ella's expression softened, yet remained wary. "He told you things he never should have. I understand how that gave you hope. But hope can be cruel. Trust me, I know." Later that day, doctors determined that Camilla and the baby were stable, though she would need monitoring. Gregory arrived later, anxious and distraught. Seeing Ella at Camilla's bedside filled him with conflicting emotions: guilt, shame, and perhaps a flicker of admiration. In that hospital hallway, the real possibility of fatherhood of two different families felt overwhelmingly real. The trial resumed after Camilla's medical scare, but the tone had shifted. The judge encouraged both parties to engage in mediation. Public interest was still intense, but the human drama of pregnancy and potential reconciliation overshadowed the raw legal fight. Gregory's team proposed a settlement that included child support, a trust for the baby's future education, and a scaled-back monthly allowance for Camilla. She would also receive a respectable penthouse, though not as opulent as she initially demanded. Camilla insisted on a more significant lump sum payout, claiming she needed financial security to protect her child from Gregory's potential change of heart. Ella surprised everyone by suggesting a middle ground that balanced the child's welfare with limiting what she viewed as Camilla's opportunistic claims. For a fleeting moment, Camilla and Ella seemed united by their shared reality. Both carried Farnsworth children and both had been lied to. Ultimately, Judge Reynolds insisted on final arguments to ensure fairness. Gregory took the stand for an emotional testimony, admitting he had betrayed Ella, that he had misled Camilla. He apologized publicly to both women, promising to care for both children. The press ate up every word. Some cynics derided his testimony as a public relations maneuver, but others saw genuine remorse in his trembling voice. After weeks of legal wrangling and media spectacles, Judge Reynolds delivered her decision. Gregory Farnsworth was to pay a substantial monthly child support for Camilla's baby until the child turned 18. A trust was established for education and basic living expenses. The judge ruled against Camilla's demand for extravagant lifestyle costs, stating child support is meant for the child's welfare, not to subsidize an opulent lifestyle. Camilla received a penthouse smaller than she wanted, but still an enviable property in a prime Chicago location. In a surprising twist, Judge Reynolds admonished Gregory and Camilla for their reckless behavior, noting that the emotional distress extended to Ella, whose own pregnancy had been overshadowed by these events. While it was a civil matter and no punitive damages were awarded for emotional harm, the judge's words carried weight, underscoring the moral failings of everyone involved. Outside reporters thronged for comments. Gregory made a brief statement, offering a vague apology to his wife and acknowledging his responsibility to Camilla and the unborn child. He declined to take questions. Camilla, her face streaked with tears, muttered something about finally having justice. Aiden Royce, ever the showman, declared it a victory for single mothers everywhere. In the days following the court verdict, the media frenzy began to subside. The public had feasted on the scandal, but now another sensational story captured the headlines. For Gregory and Ella, the real work began. Their Lake Forest estate felt like a maze of emotional landmines, each room a reminder of broken promises or uncertain futures. Ella demanded space. Gregory moved into a guest wing, determined to stay close enough to help during the pregnancy, but respectful of her need to process everything. He pledged to undergo therapy, not just for himself, but couples counseling if Ella would agree. For weeks, Ella remained undecided, torn between love betrayal and the new life growing inside her. Camilla, on the other hand, found her newly upgraded status a double-edged sword. Yes, she had a comfortable penthouse and guaranteed financial support, but she also carried the stigma of being the other woman. Many of her high society friends distanced themselves wary of associating with such a public scandal. She was left with a few loyal companions who relished drama. Privately, Camilla admitted to them that she was unsure how to move forward. She'd once dreamed of becoming Mrs. Farnsworth, but that fantasy had crumbled. As Ella's due date approached, complications arose. She experienced severe morning sickness, culminating in a hospital visit for dehydration. Gregory was beside himself with worry. Despite Ella's lingering anger, she allowed him to support her in the hospital. In those tense hours, they shared a tender moment, the first genuine closeness they'd felt since the scandal broke. They spoke openly for the first time about their fears, their love, and the possibility of raising a child in a fractured family. News also reached them that Camilla had given birth prematurely. Her child, a baby girl, was placed in an incubator for a few days. Gregory visited the infant tears in his eyes, grappling with the enormity of having two children by two different women. He met Camilla in the neonatal unit. Their conversation was subdued, overshadowed by the fragile life that now connected them forever. For the first time, Camilla admitted that she didn't truly want Gregory's marriage to fail. She just wanted to feel loved and secure. Gregory responded that while he couldn't offer her a life as his wife, he would never abandon their daughter. Ella's labor was long and complicated. As she clung to Gregory's hand, she wondered if their marriage could be reborn in the same moment their child entered the world. When the baby, a healthy boy, finally arrived, all the bitterness and drama seemed to evaporate for a fleeting second. Gregory sobbed openly as he held his son, overwhelmed by the miracle of new life. Ella, exhausted and emotional, whispered, "Do you think we can ever forgive each other?" Gregory pressed his forehead against hers, tears forming. "I'm willing to spend the rest of my life trying," he said. That night, as their newborn slept in a bassinet, Gregory found himself scrolling through pictures of his other child, the baby girl who had just been born to Camilla. He felt an odd mix of guilt, sorrow, and love. He realized that the real test of his character would be how he balanced these two families, how he provided love and stability for both children despite the scandal that formed their origin story. In the months that followed, Gregory took a step back from the public eye. He delegated most of his business operations to trusted executives, seeking to focus on fatherhood and rehabilitation of his shattered relationships. He attended therapy sessions to address his pattern of deceit and his struggle with power. Ella joined him for couples counseling, sporadically unsure if she was ready to rebuild completely. Yet each session chipped away a small piece of the resentment between them. Camilla, adjusting to single motherhood, found solace in her daughter. She named the baby Grace, a reflection of the mercy she hoped to extend to herself and to Gregory. Their relationship remained strictly about co-parenting. The trust fund paid for a full-time nanny and comfortable living arrangements, but it didn't fill the hollow space where Camilla's romantic aspirations once dwelled. Society's interest in the Farnsworth scandal eventually waned, replaced by the next sensational headline. Gregory breathed a sigh of relief that the relentless media hounding was finally over. Still, occasionally, photographers would snap him entering Camilla's building, fueling rumors of a rekindled romance. In truth, they only met for arranged visits so he could spend time with Grace. Over time, Ella saw changes in Gregory. He became more patient, gentler, and more transparent about his movements and finances. He set up an online portal so Ella could see every transaction he made, a gesture to restore her trust. He apologized daily for his failings, but never once complained if Ella rejected his offers of affection. She also found it within herself to let go of some bitterness. She recognized that Gregory's mistakes, while grievous, stemmed from fear and insecurities. It didn't excuse his actions, but it offered a path to understanding. Gradually, she allowed him to move back into their shared bedroom. They were still forging a new normal, one that would always include another child outside their marriage, another woman forever linked to their family. But the healing had begun. It had been several months since the verdict, and though the media frenzy had died down, the emotional aftermath still lingered. Gregory continued his efforts to rebuild trust with Ella, showing up consistently, attending therapy, and prioritizing fatherhood over business headlines. But healing wasn't linear. Some days brought calm conversation, others raw silence. Then one evening, Ella received a message that made her heart skip. It was from Camilla. Would you meet me? Just us. I'd like to talk. No hidden motives. Ella read it twice, then a third time. The thought of sitting across from the woman who had, whether intentionally or not, ripped her marriage apart sent a chill through her. But there was something disarming about the tone. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't demanding. It was human. After hours of reflection and a long phone call with her mother, Ella replied, "Tomorrow 4 p.m. Café Mistral near the lake." The next day, the late afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the sidewalk. As Ella approached the cafe, nestled near the shore of Lake Michigan, it was quiet and understated, with large windows and a gentle view of the waves. Inside, Camilla was already seated by the glass, Grace's stroller beside her. Ella hesitated for only a second before walking in. "Thank you for coming," Camilla said softly, standing to greet her. She looked different, not in appearance, but in energy. Gone was the glimmer of entitlement, the sharp edge of ambition. In its place was something grounded. Maybe motherhood had softened her, or maybe the chaos had stripped her ego bare. They sat opposite each other, two women connected by pain choices, and a little girl in a stroller who blinked up at Ella with wide, curious eyes. Ella glanced at Grace, then at Camilla. "What is it you wanted to talk about?" Camilla took a deep breath. "I know I'm the last person you probably want to hear from, and I'm not asking for forgiveness, but I wanted to talk not as rivals, not as anything from the past, but as mothers." Ella's eyes softened. "Go on." "I want Grace to know her brother Camilla," said her voice trembling just slightly. "They're siblings. I know what people say about me. I know what I've done. But Grace is innocent in all this, and so is Thomas. I don't want them to grow up like strangers." For a long moment, Ella said nothing. She looked out at the lake, at the sunlight, shimmering over the water's surface. Then she looked back at Grace, her tiny hands waving, a faint giggle escaping her lips. "I never imagined being in a situation like this," Ella whispered. "But you're right. They didn't ask for any of this. They deserve a chance to be siblings, friends, whatever they want." Camilla's eyes welled with tears. "I appreciate that more than you know." Their conversation lingered. They spoke cautiously about feedings, sleep schedules, first words. It wasn't friendship, but it was something surprisingly close to civility. When the meeting ended, they stood, each cradling a child. They exchanged a hesitant but genuine goodbye, promising to arrange a future play date. As Ella walked back toward her car, Thomas squirmed happily in her arms. She looked down at his joyful face, then back at the cafe. Camilla stood by the window, gently rocking Grace, watching Ella with a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the first step towards something better, a shared path, not of reconciliation, but of responsibility. For the sake of the children and perhaps themselves, they had begun to stitch together the fragile beginnings of a new kind of family, one born not out of love or trust, but out of courage and choice. A full year had passed since the media storm that once devoured the Farnsworth name. What had begun as whispered rumors in dimly lit cocktail lounges had erupted into front-page headlines, courtrooms packed with reporters, and a scandal that left no one untouched. But now, in the quiet corners of their lives, the aftermath took on a different shape, one that wasn't splashed in tabloids, but etched in long, quiet days and small, conscious choices. Gregory had resumed work, though, with a measured pace. He no longer thrived on power lunches or flashy investments. Instead, he focused on sustainable ventures, choosing partners based on trust rather than clout. His PR team carefully controlled his public presence, but it was clear the once unshakable titan had shifted. There was humility in his tone now. A man who once reveled in applause was learning to find comfort in silence. Ella had returned to philanthropy, but in a more grounded way. Rather than headline-grabbing galas, she began organizing support groups for women dealing with infidelity, single motherhood, and public shame. She never publicly addressed the scandal, but those who met her privately said she spoke with clarity and surprising grace. Her strength, they said, wasn't loud, it was steady. Their son Thomas had become a living symbol of their resilience. Gregory and Ella made an intentional effort to co-parent with openness and emotional transparency, even on days when old wounds still throbbed. Gregory's commitment to therapy and eventually couples counseling showed in the way he handled difficult conversations. He no longer deflected or dodged. He listened even when it hurt. Camilla, too, had changed. While she had once basked in luxury and notoriety, she now embraced a more subdued life. Her daughter Grace was her world. The penthouse no longer felt like a prize. It was simply home. Camilla had launched a small but successful online platform promoting maternity fashion, combining her taste for elegance with lessons learned from public fallout. She gave interviews not about the scandal, but about resilience and rebuilding as a single mother. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Gregory and Ella sat on their porch one night, watching the stars over Lake Forest. "Do you think we could have avoided all this?" he asked softly. Ella exhaled, then replied, "No. You don't get to the truth without tearing down what's false first. The question isn't whether it had to happen, it's whether we learned from it." Gregory looked out over the lawn, where Thomas's toys lay scattered, and nodded. "I think I finally am." The scandal, once a firestorm, had settled into something more complex, a quiet reckoning. Painful as it was, it had also carved a path toward growth, healing, and a hard-earned maturity for all three of them. And somewhere between scandal and redemption, a different kind of family began to take root. Imperfect, fragile, but real. 1 year after the courtroom drama that upended their lives, the Farnsworth estate hosted a gathering unlike any it had seen before. There were no journalists camped at the gates, no scandal-hungry guests, just close family, a few trusted friends, and the soft laughter of children. It was Thomas's first birthday, and Ella had insisted on something intimate, simple, and heartfelt. The garden was decorated with soft blue and cream banners, a modest balloon arch swaying in the summer breeze. A local caterer arranged finger foods and small cakes on white linen tables. There were no photographers, no designer gowns, just sincerity. And despite the emotional labor it cost her, Ella had sent an invitation to Camilla. Many were surprised, including Gregory, who had silently wrestled with whether such a moment could ever happen. But Ella understood something deeper now. Their son and Camilla's daughter Grace were siblings. Their bond, however complicated in origin, was innocent and unbreakable. To deny them a relationship because of the adult's mistakes would be cruel. Camilla arrived late, dressed plainly but elegantly. She cradled Grace against her shoulder, her movements careful. Her eyes darted nervously as she walked through the estate's front entrance. It was the first time she had returned since the lawsuit ended. The grandeur, once something she had longed to claim, now felt heavy and unfamiliar, but she pressed forward. Ella met her halfway across the lawn. For a moment, both women stood still, two mothers, two versions of love, both shaped by the same man's mistakes. Ella extended a hand, not with warmth, but with civility. Camilla shook it. "Thank you for coming," Ella said, her voice measured. "I wasn't sure I should," Camilla admitted. "But Grace should know her brother. I couldn't keep her away." They walked together, to the picnic tables where Gregory knelt beside Thomas, helping him open a gift. When he looked up and saw Camilla holding Grace, something flickered in his expression. Guilt, perhaps, but also something close to relief. He gave a nod of acknowledgement, then turned back to Thomas, who had now become enamored with a plush toy. It was Thomas who broke the tension between the families. As he waddled toward Grace, clutching the toy in his chubby hands, he extended it toward her. Grace, fascinated, reached out with tiny fingers. The two toddlers locked eyes, exchanged curious smiles, and giggled. That moment, two innocent children laughing dissolved some invisible wall. Gregory, Ella, and Camilla stood together just a few feet apart, watching their children connect. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet, but it was something like peace. Throughout the afternoon, there were awkward silences, a few stilted exchanges, but no open hostility. Camilla fed Grace under the shade of a birch tree. Ella passed her a napkin. Gregory stayed mostly quiet, humbled by the presence of both women and overwhelmed by the symbolism of the day. The gathering wasn't perfect. It was raw and real. But for a brief afternoon, fractured pieces came together, not as a family in the traditional sense, but as something new, something that just might endure. Life, as Ella once said, rarely ties itself in neat little bows, and for the Farnsworth family, the truth had never felt more vivid. The birthday party had offered a glimpse of peace, but the road ahead was still uneven, filled with emotional potholes and moments of hard reckoning. What came next wasn't a fairy tale ending, but the start of a long, conscious journey toward healing. Gregory and Ella agreed on one thing: they needed to raise Thomas in a home built not on appearances, but on honesty. The glamour of charity galas and high society circles no longer held the appeal it once did. Ella declined several invitations to return to her former social calendar, choosing instead to spend more time at home, focusing on motherhood and quiet reflection. Gregory, too, began pulling back from public engagements, handing off board responsibilities, and traveling less. He wasn't disappearing, just refocusing. They were not fixed, not by any stretch. Therapy sessions continued. Some days ended in exhausted silence. Others ended with glimmers of laughter. Gregory still slept in the guest room more nights than not. He respected Ella's space, understanding that rebuilding trust was not about grand gestures, but about showing up every day consistently with humility. Camilla, on the other hand, was charting her own course. Grace had become her anchor. Though she had once craved luxury and status, motherhood shifted her priorities in unexpected ways. She now found fulfillment in building something of her own, a maternity fashion boutique that began as a small online venture but was quickly gaining traction. Her designs catered to real women, and her story scandal, and all had drawn attention from influencers and customers alike. But success didn't make the whispers go away. In upscale circles, Camilla's name still sparked raised eyebrows. Some people never looked past the tabloid headlines. Yet she pressed on, determined to redefine herself. She joined a support network for single mothers, donating a portion of her boutique's proceeds to help women transition out of difficult relationships. Her fame, once accidental, had become a tool not for vanity, but for purpose. Meanwhile, Gregory found himself living a life split between two worlds, one with Ella and Thomas, another with Grace and her mother. He scheduled regular visits to Camilla's penthouse, always respectful, never overstaying. Grace had started recognizing him, reaching out her tiny arms and babbling "Dada." Those moments stirred a mix of wonder and guilt in him. He knew he had failed these women, but he was determined not to fail his children. Occasionally, he and Camilla would exchange quiet reflections in the nursery. There was no bitterness anymore, just realism. "We were never meant to last," Camilla said, once, gently rocking Grace. "But I'm grateful for her and for what I've learned." Gregory nodded. "So am I." Back in Lake Forest, Ella began opening up, slowly, cautiously. She started allowing Gregory to join her and Thomas for meals. He read bedtime stories, changed diapers, and took early morning walks with their son through the garden paths that once felt like a stage. Now they were simply a playground. One autumn evening, as golden leaves fell around them, Ella watched Gregory hoist Thomas onto his shoulders, both of them laughing. She felt a strange peace settle in her chest. It wasn't the life she had dreamed of, but maybe it was something better, something real. Their marriage was no longer based on perfection. It had been shattered and pieced back together with the hard glue of effort and forgiveness. It bore scars, but also strength. The road forward was long, uncertain, and winding. But for the first time in a long while, all three adults, Gregory, Ella, and Camilla, were walking it with clearer eyes, shared purpose, and a newfound resolve to raise their children with love, respect, and truth. That more than any courtroom verdict or public redemption was the true victory. We've just witnessed a story where love, betrayal, and the harsh glare of the public eye clashed in a battle for truth. From secret promises to public scandal, Gregory Farnsworth's double life spiraled into a courtroom showdown that tested the boundaries of marriage, trust, and redemption. In the end, two children became the living symbols of everything gained and lost, reminding us that even in the darkest scandals, innocent lives deserve compassion and stability. If you found yourself captivated by this high-stakes drama, there's more to come. We'll explore other real-life sagas, dive into secret worlds, and unveil hidden truths in future videos. Don't miss out. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. By doing so, you'll join a community that thrives on unveiling the most riveting stories, sparking conversations, and reminding us all that truth is often stranger than fiction. See you next time.